They always told you success was a strategy, that if you followed a plan, checked the boxes, bought the course, read the book, you'd get there. But they never told you what really separates the ones who rise from the ones who rot. It's not talent, not education, not timing, not money. It's this one shift, the hardest one of all, taking full, radical, no excuses ownership of your life. That's the moment everything changes. The moment you stop saying, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with it?" The moment you stop outsourcing blame and start insourcing power, that shift, it's not sexy, it's not loud, but it's the difference between building a legacy and spending your life defending your limitations. You want to know why most people stay stuck? Because they've built their entire personality around their pain. Their identity is chained to a story, one they didn't write, but one they keep reading. And until you rip that page out, until you burn that version of you, nothing rewires. The shift begins here. I am responsible for how this ends. Not your boss, not your partner, not your upbringing. You, the second you claim that you get your power back, not the illusion of control, not the comfort of blaming conditions, but the raw, terrifying, electrifying power of being the author now. Look around. Every leader, every builder, every name etched into history, they all made the shift. Edison didn't wait for light. He created it and failed 1,000 times to get there. Carnegie didn't come from wealth. He built it brick by mental brick. Lincoln lost more than he won, but he refused to surrender authorship of his mission. Disney was rejected, mocked, fired until he made the world see what he believed. That's not magic, that's ownership. And once you own your life, your beliefs are next. Because you don't rise to your ambition, you fall to the floor of your beliefs. Most people don't fail because they're weak. They fail because they're loyal to the wrong identity. They believe they're not ready. They believe they're not worthy. They believe their past defines their limit. But belief is not truth. Belief is a story you chose and you can unchoose it. You want to rewire your life, rewire your beliefs, because belief is the architecture of behavior. It determines how high you'll aim, how long you'll endure, and how far you'll go when pain shows up. So ask yourself, what belief are you willing to die for but never tested? What belief keeps you playing small, calling it humble? What belief needs to be buried so a new one can be born? Because no breakthrough begins until the lie dies. You are not broken. You are not late. You are not missing anything. You are powerful, underutilized, and one shift away from a completely different identity. That shift, it begins with honesty. Brutal, cleansing honesty. Where have you been lying to yourself? Where have you been showing up 60% and calling it effort? Where have you been hiding under "I'm figuring it out" when you know it's fear? You can't fix what you won't face, and facing it doesn't weaken you, it rebuilds you. Because clarity is where power begins. Most people don't lack motivation, they lack clarity. They don't know what they want. They don't know who they're becoming. They drift. And drift is the death of destiny. You want power, then define it. Define what success means to you, not Instagram, not your family, you. Define what discipline looks like, not punishment, but precision. Define who you will never be again and set it in stone. That's how you begin. That's how the wiring starts to change. Not with a New Year's goal, with a funeral for who you've been, because the old you cannot follow you into the life you say you want. And the cost of transformation is always identity. So choose to take the weight, choose to carry it with pride, because life doesn't get easier, you get stronger. And that strength, it's not born from ease, it's born from integrity. When what you say, what you believe, and what you do are the same thing. That's the new wiring. That's the new operating system. Not try harder, but be clearer. Act louder. Stand taller. The old you shrinks in confusion. The new you sharpens in clarity. And every time you choose alignment over excuse, you rewire. You don't just change habits, you change who you are becoming. And once clarity takes hold, you stop chasing everything. Because you finally understand you don't need more goals. You need more alignment. You don't need more ideas. You need to finish what you started. You don't need another book, another guru, another podcast. You need to act on what you already know. That's the next shift, from consumer to creator. From learning to living, the people who never rewire stay addicted to input. They hoard inspiration like it's currency, but they never cash it in. They sit on stacks of potential, starving for progress. But the moment you flip that switch, the moment you say, I'm done studying what I refuse to implement, that's when your momentum begins. Because motion rewires memory. Every time you follow through, your brain says, I guess we are this kind of person now. Not because you repeated affirmations, but because you moved when it was hard. Action is identity in motion. So you take the step not when you're ready. You're never ready. That's the lie. You take the step because you're not ready, because that's how growth is built under weight, under doubt, under resistance. The gym doesn't work because the weights are light. It works because they're heavy. And so is this. This shift is heavy. That's why almost no one does it. They want the life, but not the rewiring. They want the reward, but not the rebuild. They want the outcome, but not the overhaul of identity it demands. But you're still here. You're still reading this. You haven't clicked away, and that tells me something. It tells me that deep down, you're already shifting, because the old you would have closed this tab, said, I know this already, said, I've heard it before. But the new you listen differently, you lean in, you recognize the truth, and you act. And here's the brutal truth few will say out loud. The life you want will cost you the life you've been protecting. You've spent years defending your comfort, your story, your habits, and what has that given you? Validation, justification. Validation doesn't build anything. Justification never changed a life. Only action does. Only the moment you stop negotiating with mediocrity and start betting on effort, and that doesn't mean hustle, that doesn't mean grinding yourself into the ground. It means choosing to live with intention on a Tuesday, when nobody's watching and your mood says quit. It means doing what's hard, not because it's heroic, but because it's yours to do. That's discipline, not punishment, alignment with purpose. Discipline is the strongest act of self-love you will ever perform, because it says, I believe in the future version of me enough to act now. It says, I trust that the results will catch up to the process. It says, I'm not living on luck, I'm living on principle. And principle, it rewires everything. When your actions are tied to who you're becoming, not how you feel the world bends, doors open, energy changes. People respond differently to you, not because they know what's changed, but because they feel it. That's the secret. You don't have to announce your shift. You just become it so loudly they can't ignore it. And how do you become it? One decision at a time. Not a resolution, a repeatable rhythm. You wake up, you choose the standard, not the emotion. You choose the reps, not the results. You choose the alignment, not the applause. And one day, you wake up and realize you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to fake confidence because you've built evidence. The evidence of a rewired life. You'll walk different, speak with fewer words but more weight. Not because you're louder, but because you carry something. Something earned, something sacred. And it all started with that one shift. I'm done blaming. I'm done waiting. I'm done folding when it's hard. I choose responsibility. I choose clarity. I choose identity over image. And then it happens something subtle, something seismic. You wake up one morning and you don't need the alarm to believe in yourself. You don't need the world to validate your mission. You don't need dopamine spikes to keep going, because now your behavior is driven by conviction, not circumstance. Your mindset is no longer built on hype, it's built on principles, and principles don't expire. And when that switch is flipped, you stop being pulled by motivation and start being pushed by purpose. You stop chasing momentum and start manufacturing it through movement. And the world notices. It doesn't congratulate you. It doesn't roll out the red carpet. It just gets out of your way, because energy respects energy. You'll walk into rooms and people won't know what changed, but they'll feel it. They'll feel the gravity of someone who's chosen themselves fully. That's the effect of the shift. You don't just operate different, you attract different conversations, different standards, different outcomes. Because what you tolerate now, you used to celebrate. What used to impress you now bores you. Not because you're arrogant, but because you've grown. And growth rewires your appetite. You start craving hard things. Deep work, real progress, quiet wins, unapplauded discipline. You'd rather stack silent proof than chase loud approval. You'd rather lose followers than lose your standard. And you finally realize you don't need to become successful. You just need to stop betraying your future for comfort. Because the more you honor your future, the more the present begins to serve you. You start showing up with more clarity, more fire, more unshakable calm. Because that's what rewired people carry, not chaos, but centeredness. They move slowly, but with force. They don't panic. They prepare. They don't shout their goals. They execute. And every day becomes an act of alignment, not pressure, but presence. No more reacting to life. Now you respond. And response is where mastery lives, because life will still hit you. Storms will still come. But when you're rewired, you don't ask, why me? You say, watch me, because nothing can take down a person who's already decided to rise. Nothing can undo a mind that's already built itself back up brick by disciplined brick. And that's what this shift is really about. It's not about becoming superhuman. It's about returning to who you were before the world told you to play small, before fear, before delay, before you needed permission. The rewired version of you doesn't ask for motivation. They build environments that demand action. They set their schedule around standards, not feelings. They use resistance as a gym, not an excuse. They don't resent pressure, they thrive under it. Because pressure is a gift when your wiring is strong. It reveals cracks, and you don't run from cracks, you reinforce them. You don't avoid hard days, you're trained by them. That's the new foundation. That's the architecture of someone who's done waiting, someone who's replaced fantasy with follow-through, someone who doesn't just dream big, but executes consistently, not because it's easy, but because the alternative is regret, and regret is a weight you refuse to carry anymore. You'd rather suffer in progress than rot in potential, because potential without execution, that's just torment with a good publicist. And you're done performing. You're done explaining. You're done editing your fire so the room feels safe. You'd rather be too much for the wrong people than not enough for your own mission. That's the edge. That's the shift. And once it clicks, you don't go back. You can't, because now you've seen what's possible not out there, but in you. You've seen what happens when belief, clarity, and action finally align. Now you understand it was never the world holding you back. It was the version of you who settled, who rationalized, who hesitated one too many times. That version you buried them with every decision, every act of self-respect, every time you showed up tired, afraid, underprepared, but showed up anyway. That was the funeral, not of your weakness, but of your dependence on it. Because this shift doesn't just upgrade your actions, it removes your exits. No more fallback plans, no more half-built bridges to old comfort, no more halfway identity. You are either aligned or you are at war with your future. And you've chosen not once, but daily in the quiet, in the dark, in the hours no one sees, but that shape everything. That's where transformation lives, in repetition without recognition. Because legacy isn't built by what you post. It's built by what you repeat. You've repeated effort. You've repeated focus. You've repeated high standards without high praise. That's not luck. That's not hype. That's character chiseled through fire. So now the shift is complete. Not because life got easier, but because you became harder to break. Now, setbacks don't spiral you, they sharpen you. You don't crumble under pressure, you crystallize under it. Because a rewired mind doesn't flinch. It adapts, it recalibrates. It moves forward without asking for permission. And the world, it starts to shift too. Not because it changed, but because you changed how you show up in it. You no longer react, you lead. You no longer prove, you embody. You no longer shrink, you expand, unapologetically. You speak with fewer words, but more weight. You walk into rooms that once intimidated you, and now you anchor them. Because this isn't confidence built on noise. This is certainty built on discipline, the kind of discipline that's born when you no longer outsource your power, the kind that whispers, I built this, I stayed when it was silent. I followed through when no one clapped. You don't need applause now. You've become the proof. You've become the echo of your own effort. And here's the truth. No one will say most people will never do this. They will want it. They will watch it. But they won't become it. Because this shift, it costs everything except your soul. You'll lose distractions. You'll lose comfort. You'll lose the version of you that needed ease to function. But what you gain, unshakable momentum, unstoppable peace, a direction so clear even storms can't shake it, a self so aligned, no opinion can move it, a standard so high, no compromise can live near it. And you'll finally feel what most never will, not hype, not rush, not fleeting pride, but quiet power. That stillness in your chest that says, I don't need to chase anymore. I've become the thing I used to run toward. Because when you make this one shift, when you finally take full ownership, when belief matches behavior, when clarity meets consistency, and discipline becomes identity, that's when the world changes. Not around you, because of you. And when they ask what you did, how you rewired your entire life, how you got so focused, so different, so certain you won't say much, you'll just smile. Because you'll know it wasn't a miracle, it wasn't luck, it wasn't a course, a hack, or a phase. It was this. I made the shift and I never went back.